I said, hey, yo, what is going on, guys? It's your boy, Mojados, and we're back for another video. I hope you guys are doing well, and a happy new year to everybody out there. I'm wishing you the best year of your life, self-improvement, financial success, whatever your goals are. It's a new year, and it's time to talk about BTC, guys, because this video is going to be all about Bitcoin. We're going to be covering, technical indicators, on-chain metrics, price action, ranges, everything you need to look at when pretty much looking at Bitcoin at this current moment. Is the bottom in? Is it not in? These are the questions I'm going to be doing my best to answer in this video. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So first things first, taking a look at Bitcoin, we are in a range, and that is not pretty much unapparent, right? And before we get into this range, there's something more important that we need to look at. And we got to focus on the big picture because that's really what it's about, guys. That's really what it's about. And I'm going to quickly remove this because, we're going to be covering something else throughout the video. But when we look at this overall picture, guys, you have to remember the first thing. And the first thing is that for the first time in Bitcoin history, we have never retraced back to previous all-time highs. For the first time in Bitcoin history, we have not seen a double top, right? And for the first time in Bitcoin history, we are seeing a trend break, right? And it's not unapparent that these things are happening. A lot of people, including myself, did not expect this to occur. But we're going to be, again, discussing what this means, how we can do our best to prepare for this next cycle, and of course, being very, very careful moving forward. Because again, like every other market and anything that we, see, things change. And just because something happened in the past, doesn't mean it's going to happen again in the same way in the future. Because at the end of the day, things are ever changing. The markets are rapidly, adapting to environment. And of course, we've seen that example primarily throughout COVID in the equity markets. So, when we look at the market right now, you can see here clearly that, this was a blow off top, right? We saw a blow off top here in 2014 and a blow off top in 2017. But again, we didn't get that blow off top in 2021. So again, things definitely change. And of course, this is a blow off top in 2017, but in 2021, we got a double top. So things definitely are different, and you can always expect things to always throw you off, right? Because as traders, as investors, market conditions are changing, and pretty much it's done purposely in some ways because you're supposed to be confused. You're not supposed to have direction. Do you think that when you trade against somebody, you want them to see your position, right? When you're playing blackjack, you hide your cards because you don't want your opponent to know what you have, if you're bluffing or not, right? And when you're trading, it's really a ruthless game of trying to outsmart the next investor, because at the end of the day, someone's selling, someone's buying, and the timing of it all really plays into effect of how things occur. So again, going more into the technical side now, because of course I'm giving more of the mental side of it, right? But let's jump into indicators and say, what can we look at then, Mo? If you're talking about, being outsmarted and you're talking about these examples, what can we look at? And again, one of the first things is kind of looking at the RSI. One thing that's proven time and time again, and this is again looking at the 2-week because it does a good job, holding the best in my opinion. You can see that anytime the price came down to this low at 40 RSI, whether it consolidated like it did in 2015 or whether it bounces right off like it did in 2020 on this V-shaped recovery, the RSI done a very good job of holding. And also we're on top of support, and that support is from 2017. So that is very interesting to look at, right? So first thing right off the bat is that we're out of support. We're getting some bullish divergence on the 2-week, but does it hold? And that's the question. Just because you're getting, bullish divergence doesn't necessarily mean that, price is going to bounce off that low. So I want to be very clear. Just because there's a sign or an indicator that, the market could be weakening, it's not necessarily a sign that the bottom's in. So, now that we looked at the RSI is giving us a green light that somewhere around this area, sometime soon even, we can probably bottom, right? So that's the first thing. Another thing that I want to share is going to be ranges. So I'm going to quickly pull up ranges here, and I'm going to use a Coinbase chart, right? I'm not going to use data from pre-2015 for simplicity's sake. But when we look at ranges, right, and I kind of touched base on this in my last video, but because we're in the new month, in the new year, I think I'm going to quickly touch base on it. When you look at ranges before every single bull market, you're definitely going to see a fake out period and a period of consolidation, okay? And I have the 2 week here because I think it's going to be simpler, but I'm just going to actually come down to the 1 week just because why not, right? So what you can see here is a consolidation period and a flush period, right? So make sure that when you're watching for a low to be put in, whether it's Bitcoin or any other altcoins you like, look for a flush. Okay, and even if you miss the flush, guys, right? Because usually what we're going to see is a flush take place, but then what we're going to see follow is some type of again follow through in volume, a follow through in a support, whatever the hell you like to use, right? Because what you can see here is pretty much price pushing off the lows of the flush and then reclaiming the range here. So you can clearly see that it becomes a support there. And even if you missed it, you had another chance to long this. So, got to be very careful and watch that. But that's like one way to look at it. And you can even see that kind of price actually be mimicked in 2019 of the next bull market. And again, these ranges are usually good when you're trying to find the low of the bull market, or the beginning of the bull market, end of the bear market, better said. But here you can clearly see 2018 price comes down. There's a flush right here. This is a flush right here. But again, this is the reclaim, guys. So you got to be very careful. This is the reclaim because not every range will play out exactly the same. If everything repeated exactly the same, everybody will be millionaires, right? But that's not possible. Not everybody can win in these markets, right? So because of that, things often are a little different, right? In the other instance, what you saw was just a flush of the range, right? You didn't see that, in the middle of the range where it gets a flush. You saw it towards the end of the range. In this instance, you get the flush. You don't really get the same kind of flush because what happens is the flush pretty much ends up breaking past. So what happens is this kind of goes up. It comes in, it retests this low, which is actually an indication the bottom is in for this range, especially if it holds it. And then what you can see is a follow through after, but you don't get that reclaim at the end because this was the reclaim at the bottom. So that is your indication to go long. And of course it does go up, and then you do get a retest of this range later on over here, of course. So that's something that is not really worth mentioning per se, like it happened, because it's kind of like later on, but it's still interesting that the retest always does take place. And so right now, when we fast forward to this current moment, how do we apply that same range strategy? And this is what we have. Okay, guys, so what you're seeing is, again, the range low. This is the flush, in my opinion. Now, could I be wrong about this flush? Can this go lower? Yes, it can. However, how do we try to catch the bottom? And the way that we do is we try to identify the range, which this looks like a range here, and wait patiently for confirmation. What's that confirmation? Waiting for this low to be grabbed, guys. So what we're waiting for is that next move back to here to confirm that the bottom is in, right? Because what happens is, if you've noticed, there's always a deviation of some sort or some type of flush, like I've been describing in this video, right? In 2018 over here, what you saw was a flush outside the range and then a reclaim. So what you want is the same exact thing to happen here, right? So you see this is the big move down. This is the current flush. Now, the confirmation to go long for me is a reclaim of the range. So that is what I'm waiting for. And that's kind of how you can play it. It's very, very simple. And there's other things you can use alongside with that. And I've talked about the RSI, how it's actually bullish at this moment. And another thing you can even use, guys, is on the Coinbase chart. As you can see clearly here, that every single time we've bottomed, you can see a peak in volume, right? Over here, when the low was put, peak in volume. Over here, after the initial 2021 bull run, right, we saw a peak in volume, which kind of had a rebound. And the biggest hint for me is after the FTX collapse, guys, this was the biggest wick or sell-off that we've seen on Coinbase, which is very, very interesting. Don't mind me. I'm gonna take a quick sip of water here. But this is very interesting, and I think that, hey, this is a very good indication and a healthy sign that we are pretty much in for some type of reversal down the line. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to $1 trillion. No, I'm not saying all that, okay? But what I am saying is that, hey, listen, this is a good opportunity that if we reclaim this low, if we maintain momentum, if we can have some good follow through, that this Bitcoin bottom can be put in, right? And when I say bottom, I use that term very loosely. It doesn't mean it's the actual macro bottom, because it could just mean that it's a local bottom, right? And then these local bottoms, depending on if there's follow through, turn into macro bottoms, right? So I'll never sit here and say the bottom is in 100% macro. If you do see me that, maybe I'm just kind of messing around, but the main point is that first you get a bottom, it's a local bottom, then it turns into a macro bottom, right? Because no one actually knows if the bottom is in or if that's the final sell-off or X, Y, and Z, unless you're really a market maker with a really unlimited amount of money. So, that's really the exception. And I think most of us, or anybody on Twitter or even YouTube, is going to even focus on looking at videos or even spending their time talking about, whether the bottom's in, because, they're already out there making it happen, printing unlimited amounts of money, putting in these bottoms, because that's pretty much what market makers do. And so with that, now that you guys see what I'm looking for pretty much on a price standpoint, using the RSI, talking about volume, talking about ranges, I want to just pivot real quickly to dominance charts, right? So this is the ETH and Bitcoin dominance chart. When you put this together, you kind of get this interesting looking chart. And, when we look at alt seasons, the last time we saw ETH and Bitcoin fall together is when the alt season took place in 2021. And then we saw a big period of consolidation. And right now we're seeing something interesting occur, right? This area specifically that I have read looks like it wants to break down. So I personally think that we're going to experience a salt season, which basically just means that some altcoins will outperform Bitcoin and Ethereum, right? And you're probably saying, Mo, what the hell does that have to do with Bitcoin, right? Because like we've experienced, right, Bitcoin is not acting normal, right? We saw it break all-time highs. We saw it make a double top. It's acting in ways that it's never did before. And a lot of people right now are saying, hey, Mo, we're expecting Bitcoin dominance to reclaim highs. I personally am not under that impression, because when we look at Ethereum dominance, guys, this is a very bullish structure, right? I see pretty much a inverse head and shoulders. I believe that this is probably going to move to the upside, right? And when Ether is moving to the upside, usually what happens is altcoins also move to the upside and Bitcoin dominance kind of breaks down. Now, again, that doesn't mean that it's bad for Bitcoin, because you got to remember that dominance just means that the market as a whole, is kind of moving their money around. And also, guys, this market is going to continue growing. There's going to be other things that complement Bitcoin, right? So with all that in mind, you have to look at technical indicators and put yourself in the best position possible to maximize, your performance, right? Whatever that is, whether you want to stack more sats, whether you want to be in and out of other altcoins, whatever the hell it is, I like to look at everything, because at the end of the day, there's going to be multiple indicators, multiple insights you can draw from everything. So with that, I think it's going to be important to, try to look at most things that are relevant. So that's why I have the ETH and Bitcoin dominance chart here. So that's why I think all salt season is going to occur. I don't think it's going to go down to 50%, but of course, anything is possible. So something to watch out very closely for, and something to pay real close attention to. And now I want to pivot towards on-chain metrics, because this is where it gets very interesting. So this is address with balance of greater than 1 Bitcoin. So you can see that people are stacking sats, and we're hitting all-time highs. Very, very good. This is addresses with 10 Bitcoins. We're not at all-time highs yet, but I think we're growing, and this is obviously another great thing. And guys, we're also seeing 100 addresses starting to peak as well. So across the board, we're seeing a lot of great things happening. But here's where it gets interesting. The 1,000 Bitcoin addresses are dropping, and they have pretty much dropped to a 3-year low. Okay, so whether that's good, whether that's bad, it's up to you to make your own decision. I personally think, and I'm under the impression, that maybe this money is moving around. Maybe people are buying altcoins, or maybe these whales are going to come back in at a later time. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know exactly how it's going to play out, but I do think it's interesting because when we kind of look at all this, I think that the selling is kind of more than the allocation of addresses of 110 and 100. I don't have an exact number for that, but I would love to see if there is something like that. Please comment below if you know. But to me, it looks like, you know, the selling pressure is higher from bigger addresses because they hold more coins. And when we look at the current market at this moment, it does look like, you know, whales are partially the reason why everything is kind of been falling. And I think it's also more interesting that when we look across the board, this is the first time in Bitcoin history where 1,000 addresses are selling instead of buying at a bear market. So when we look here during this bear market, addresses went up. When we look over here, addresses went up. And over here, so in 3 separate times when the prices were going down and then were followed by an uptrend, we saw Bitcoin addresses increase during bear markets and kind of go down during bull markets, right? Because it makes sense. You buy in when it's low and you sell when it's high. And this is what whales are doing. But for the first time, we're seeing the complete opposite of whales completely getting out of Bitcoin during the bear market, which is very, very interesting. And also, you know, the question is like, is this address is holding a lot of Bitcoins or a little Bitcoins, right? And when we look closer, what you can see here is this is the 1 year plus HODL wave. And kind of what this does is it uses addresses of people who are holding their Bitcoin for more than a year. So, you know, I don't know how to look at, you know, who's holding what, but essentially 2/3 of the network is pretty much holding their Bitcoins, which is insane to me. And I think that that's something that, you know, is something of, you know, power, right? And when we look at Bitcoin as a whole, there's just never been this kind of behavior. Like if you really just think about how crazy this is, like people are holding Bitcoin like a cult, right? And I'm not trying to say a cult a bad thing or a good thing, but like it's just so fascinating. It really is that people are saying, screw the fiat currency system. We need a hedge, whether you believe it's a hedge or not. You know, I'm not even trying to get into all of that, but like 66% of holders are saying we believe in Bitcoin. And that's a strong statement of its own. So whether or not it recovers now or later, I think that the future of Bitcoin 10 years down the line is something that is going to be worth watching, right? So we'll see what happens with that. I think it's definitely something to consider. And also, these are active addresses, and this is something that's also very bullish when we look at the Bitcoin price at this moment. Each and every single time that we've seen, you know, a top being formed, what you see is addresses kind of top with the price, but also when it bottoms, you know, you'll see that it rises with it. So that's also very bullish. So if you look at 2018 here, you see an all-time low of, or not an all-time low, but you see a low for active addresses, and then it increases as the price kind of goes in a range. But of course, it sets a higher low over here, but prices in active addresses are increasing. That's the same situation you're seeing here. So it's kind of, you know, interesting because one can argue with this that, hey, look, it's looking like the bottom is in from an on-chain perspective, as well as looking at the pure multiple, which also indicates that the bottom is in. This has also done an amazing job when we look across the board. But I want to be very clear here that this is also, you know, just like any other indicator, you know, at the end of the day, no matter how you want to look at it, whatever you want to use, these are all on-chain metrics. At the end of the day, price action is going to be king in my personal opinion. I do think it's nice to see these on-chain metrics because it does paint a picture that one can't, you know, use without, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's kind of cool that we can see this stuff, right? Seeing address holders, seeing active addresses, seeing types of holders by coin amount, right? So there's just multiple things across the board, and it is very, very cool. And I am happy we get to see it. But this is, again, another cool indicator that has been pretty reliable, right? So, again, none of this is, of course, financial advice. I don't know why I have to say that, but I just like to say it because, you know what? Some people might not, you know, get it, right? I mean, Bitcoin is here to stay. At the end of the day, whether you like to stack it now, I think it's definitely a good time to stack. It's not, again, it's not financial advice, but it's going to be fun to watch. And you know, when we do get some price action, when we do reclaim this range, guys, you will hear me telling you, put on your moon boots, put on your moon suit, because we're going to be going to the top of this range, especially after we reclaim this. So with that, please don't forget to like and subscribe. If you guys like this updates, feel free to comment below with your own predictions or what you think is going to happen. I would love to hear. And as always, haru haru haru. Peace.